So here's the first episode on classic GMC Motorhome Frame Repair. So I saw this 1973 Sequoia motorhome online, and I was able to win it in an auction and pay $1,625. Wow. About $200 in fees. It was $1,825 out the door.
Wow.
That's what it looked like in the lot. And after a 2-hour drive, this is the GMC in the new home. I purchased it with the intention of gutting it and modernizing it. So this is after I've done extensive work on pulling a lot of the stuff out. The bathroom's still in there, so I had to remove the back to get to it, but this is what happened to most of the furniture from inside the motorhome. I really like to have campfires around here, and this is how I like to start the fires. Using a propane tank and a Ryobi leaf blower, so I get a lot of oxygen in there, and it gets quite hot quite quickly. So anyway, back to the motorhome. As you can see, the interiors. This is before I even cleaned up all the debris from animals over the years, but it's pretty bad. So it's all going, the wiring, everything, because it's a fire hazard. But all those wires are disconnected from the main house and also the engine. So you'll see here, once I got the tires off out here and was really looking at it, I'm starting to see that the frame had settled because of the weight of the back of the motorhome, almost 2 inches. There's a line there through that square tube that I'm going to weld onto it. But it's 1.5 inches, 2 inches anyway, from all that weight that was just pushing down and the rust and everything. So it was in bad shape. I spent quite a bit of time removing the floor panels so that I could get to the fuel tanks. This is with a couple of floor sections removed. That first bay there, or the last bay, the bay in back, is for the black water. That second bay is for the backup tank. And this third hole is for the primary fuel tank. And that's the monstrous exhaust pipe. So now I'm moving it up to the driveway. Here's back from inside the coach. As you can see, the H-frame is pretty bad. And there's the square tube that I had welded to the top of the H-frame just to give it support to be able to drive it back up into the driveway. Here I'm dismantling the Bogie and all its associated garb. I'd use a very large breaker bar. And a giant socket set just to break these bolts free. They were probably 40 years of rust.
Wow.
And a large crowbar to pry this Bogie free of the old H-frame. So Here's from outside the coach again, and you can really start to see the damage of the H-frame. But time's a wasting, so I got to get this very heavy thing out of the way because fall's coming. And soon after fall in Michigan comes mighty cold. And now with everything out of the way, the frame is really bad. So at this point, I decided to cut it out. I was going to try and repair it, but it's just too expensive. So a helicopter comes buzzing over. That helicopter is part of a new pork producing company here in town, and it was pretty close. So here I'm placing 6 2x4s under the front of the frame and the back of the frame. I did the same thing on the other side of the coach to make sure the frame is sitting level all the way around before I started doing measurements on the original H-frame and cross members to make sure everything was at the right elevation from the concrete. Now here I'm just cutting out all the cross members so that I can remove this 6-foot section of the H-frame that is completely rusted out. Here, once I've removed all the cross members, I'm able to get that big bad piece of steel out of the way. Here on the outside of the coach, as you can see, pulling this out, that's the temporary steel tube that I put in there just to support the coach. Here I'm dry fitting the C-channel into the open space that was there. Made sure that I retain the proper measurement from the concrete up to the bottom so that the bogie that gets put back on the C-channel is at the right elevation. So that's the process that I'm going through right now, dry fit and taking a bunch of measurements. And I made sure that the new C-frame was level at all times and also plumb so that the bogie would be at the right angle. Here I'm using a laser that I found the center of the coach and placed the laser across on the other side, the passenger side, and shot it across so that I could find the center point that the bogie needed to live at, so that it matched the original spot that the bogie was in. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm checking the level and also making sure that it's at the center point line on the coach that I had marked earlier. Now I made a template that I used from the original bogie so that these holes, I could position these holes with the proper distance relative to each other on this new frame piece that I'm making. But I went off the original center line so that I know that these are in the right elevation and also in the proper position from front to rear. So once I cut these holes or drill these holes, I'm going to then attach this long frame piece back to the bogie so that I can weld up these flanges. Right, notice the little aluminum spacer there. That's to make sure that the that C-frame elevation matches the bolt holes to the flange, so that everything sits at that piece of aluminum will be removed afterwards so that I can weld on that flange, but everything will be at the proper elevation. Here I'm getting ready to bolt that flange on, and now you can see that it will be at the same elevation as the C-channel frame right there. I'm bolting that up, so now I can weld that into position. Now all these welds on the frame, I run multiple passes of welds, then I grind them flat, and then I add gussets on top of that, and then run multiple welds on top of the gusset. So these connection points are all very strong. So here I am removing the frame from the actual bogie. I took the little aluminum spacer out. I'm running again a weld on the opposite side, multiple passes, and grind that flat so it won't impede where the bogie sits on top of that or underneath it. So now I'm basically taking that piece that I just finished, I primed it, and now I'm just tack welding into place after making sure that it was at the right elevation to the original frame, and the measurements are up from the concrete, so everything was level. Here's the back of the frame, but everything is sitting at the right level and in the right position, using the laser to center up those holes so that the bogie could be put back in the right spot. You notice here at the bottom that looks like the elevation was wrong, but that's actually an optical illusion because the frame is squared off and the original frame is rounded, so that's all at the right elevation. Here I'm adding a tab for the center support piece that comes across from the frame. This is lining it up again to that. I use that laser so that all these points are correctly centered, and the bolt patterns for the bogie are exactly where the original bogie sat. So those welds are welded on both sides with gussets and multiple passes. So I believe everything on this installation is extremely strong. I did measure the other holes from the original frame, so everything is in the exact same position as it was before. I then painted the frame with a tracker enamel that's supposedly a high durability finish. I didn't paint the bolts, I just didn't think that was probably a good idea. I painted the hubs a high temperature flat black. I painted the bogie with a rubberized paint and then hard enamel over that. The manufacturer said I could do that, but in retrospect I guess you should always paint a soft surface over a hard surface rather than the other way around, because the hard surface is bonded to a soft surface. So I'm not sure if that's going to hold up or not, but I put new shocks on it, and I think it turned out pretty good. Everything is at the same elevation that it should be, and it's nice and plumb and level, and I think it turned out pretty good. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.